Backyard Farmer is a co-production of Nebraska Public Media and Nebraska Extension. Tonight on Backyard Farmer, we'll check out an apple orchard at Arbor Day Farm and hear about keeping your lawn green and lush all summer long. That's all coming up next, right here on Backyard Farmer.
I'm Kim Todd, and I'll be your host for the next hour of answering your gardening questions. You can get in touch with us by dialing 1-800-676-5446. Those great phone volunteers are standing by to take your call. You can also submit those pictures and emails for a future show. That address is byf@unl.edu. Please tell us as much as you can, including where you live, so we can give you a great answer. You can also watch past shows and features on our Backyard Farmer YouTube channel, as well as follow us during the week on our Facebook page. With that, we always start with questions, and Kyle, you are our first show at the new set and first on the docket. And your first two pictures could have come from a lot of people. This is Council Bluffs. This is the first year for this particular milkweed. The second milkweed is a different species, different person on that second picture. But the question, of course, is what, if anything, to do with all of these aphids?
Yeah, so they're oleander aphids. And, you know, I think it depends on what you want to do with the milkweed. If you're growing that, to sort of provide a host for those monarch caterpillars, then really you can just leave those aphids alone. There's actually some studies that have demonstrated that the presence of those aphids may be beneficial for monarch caterpillars, and you certainly wouldn't want to treat them with anything that would be too toxic or potentially toxic to the caterpillars as well. So you can leave them alone. If you don't care about that, you can just knock them off with spray of water or insecticidal soap. And that will knock the population back quite a bit.
All right, thank you, Kyle. One picture on the next one. This is Omaha Midtown viewer. He was going through his pumpkins, checking for squash bug eggs, and he found these tiny little creatures. He did spray with neem oil earlier in the morning, and they didn't do a thing. What are they, and will they do serious damage to his pumpkins?
Yeah, they're aphids again, probably melon aphids. So they won't probably cause much direct injury to the pumpkins. But of course, aphids always have the potential to transmit pathogens. So, I know one would be watermelon mosaic virus. That can be a problem. I think it's not as big of a problem in more mature plants. So, kind of maybe depends on where those plants are. But kind of the bad thing about that is they transmit that in a matter of seconds potentially. So even if you treat them, it doesn't necessarily mean they can't still, that wouldn't still have been transmitted already. So the neem would be, should be effective. So you can just, kind of continue those treatments as needed, but they shouldn't cause direct harm.
All right, excellent. Rock, you have two pictures on the first one. This is an Omaha viewer. She said they had a utilities upgrade and reseeded with this very, very fine, super fine sort of bluish grass. They had tall fescue and bluegrass to begin with. She's wondering what this is and whether it is a keeper.
Well, normally when they do these renovations, and they're looking for something to germinate quick, they're going to put in annual ryegrass or perennial ryegrass because it germinates in 3 to 5 days, and clearly that makes sense when you're trying to do this. But this doesn't look like annual or perennial ryegrass to me. It does look like one of the fine fescues. We don't have a good enough close-up to really define one or the other, but both of those would be keepers, except they are not going to be very long-lived in Nebraska, right? They're prone to diseases. The fine fescues in the full sun don't do very well, but the bluegrass and the fescue should fill in okay. So I'm going to say, unless it's a big gap, and if they want to, just go back in and overseed with the desirable bluegrass if they want. But right now I'm going to say it's probably annual or perennial ryegrass.
All right, you have two pictures on the next one, Rock. This is a viewer in Grand Island, he says, what can he do to get rid of this weird grass/weed that's growing in his Kentucky bluegrass?
Yeah, that looks like probably a wild Bermuda grass or perhaps a zoysia grass. And I'm leaning towards zoysia grass only because of the shortened internodes. Usually our northern Bermudas tend to have longer internodes or distances between the leaf clusters. So I'm going to say that's probably zoysia grass. And you know, especially when it goes off color after the first frost, that would definitively say that's what it is. And there really is spot spray with glyphosate-based products. Avoid the ones that contain a long residual in them, and hope for the best. But it's going to be a perennial, literally a perennial problem once it's in the space.
All right, thank you, Rock. Lauren, it's shroom time, and you have actually 4 questions in this first round. So let's see what we've got. The first one here is, this is growing in her snake plant. Should she dig it out, and is it good or bad? This in the house.
First of all, I don't like the name of the plant.
I know.
Isn't it also known as mother-in-law's tongue?
Yes, it is.
I believe so. There's something there. Okay. This one is just, I think it's just the early stage of a developing some sort of fungus. I'm guessing those are going to come out and continue to expand and produce a small mushroom. Can't really tell what they are from the photo, but if you have indoor pets, I would just surely remove those.
All right, your second one is a Sioux City, Iowa viewer. She thinks this is a mushroom. What is it?
No, those are beautiful. Those are earth stars. If you look at them, you can kind of tell why they're named that. And that center is just full of spores. They're like a puffball in the middle, and that's just how they will spread when they're mature. In that opening, the spores will come out.
All
Just a
right.
decomposer in the mulch.
Fun. And your third one comes to us from west of Kearney. No question. She wanted to share a picture of this fungus. The big one is only 1/4 of an inch across. What's this?
This is interesting. All of our viewers have seen us have pictures of slime molds. This is a different type of slime mold, actually. This is wolf's milk slime mold. If you look that up, I'm not going to give you the scientific name, but look that up and you'll be able to read more about it. It's a really interesting little guy.
And one more, and this one, they said, this mushroom-like growth, they think this is bird's nest fungus, is it? And should they get rid of it?
This is so common in our mulch beds, and they're right. This is a bird nest fungus, and you can tell it just looks like these are peridioles. These are little resistant structures that can spread like seeds inside of those little nests or the sporulation structure. Not really anything they have to worry about getting rid of. Just enjoy it.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Kelly, you have 2 pictures on your first one here. This comes to us from Laramie, Wyoming. And so he has this crab apple, lime green coloring now, doesn't look as healthy as it used to produce lots of beautiful flowers and loads of little crab apples, hardly anything now.
Okay, well, it's clearly chlorotic when you have those yellow leaves and the darker green veins, and that's usually a lack of iron, manganese, zinc, one of those 3. Not super common. I see it in crab apples, but it's not super common in crab apples, and as severe as that is, it makes me wonder if there's not something going on with the roots, with the trunk, an injury to the trunk, maybe a canker on the trunk, something that's preventing those nutrients moving from the soil, because it's rarely a lack of the nutrients in the soil, and moving up to those leaves, especially if it was fine 2-3 years ago and it was fine. I can't say what's going on. You can try to treat it. You could try to give it a treatment with iron or one of the micronutrient solutions. I know the Nebraska Forest Service has a great publication on treatment of chlorosis in trees for western Nebraska. So you might want to look for that being in Wyoming. And you could at least give that a try. But if there's a root or a trunk problem, it likely will continue to get worse and possibly decline.
All right, thank you, Kelly. You have one picture on the next one. This viewer wonders what this plant is in her yard and what do we need to know about it?
Okay, well, this is Royal Paulonia or Empress tree, Princess tree. I know it looks like a shrub, but it's probably been pruned back a number of times, and so it's just suckering up and looking like a shrub. It's not a good tree. It was introduced probably in the mid-1800s sometime from China, but it's one that's aggressive. It can be an aggressive spreader. It's not listed. It's not a noxious weed in Nebraska, but it is a noxious weed in some other states. So sometimes they're sold in magazines. So don't buy it. It's not catalpa. You go ahead and plant catalpa, but don't plant Paulonia tomentosa.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, last week we took a tour of Harris Prairie at Arbor Day Farm, and tonight we're going to return to the farm, check out their wonderful apple orchard. They have several varieties, and we're going to hear about that and what it takes to grow apples in Nebraska.
So today we're out here at the orchard at Arbor Day Farm. Behind me is what's called the cider block. They're not typically fresh eating apples. They're apples you won't really find in the store or that you'll find available like on our shelf in the apple house. So in the cider orchard we have 10 different rows of 10 different varieties. And I've chosen these varieties because they make specifically better cider, and more specifically better hard cider. These apples aren't as sweet as the normal eating apple that's bred to be, juicy and delicious like Honeycrisp, Fuji, Gala. These apples typically have a drier taste to them. They're not as sweet, maybe not as crunchy, but they have bittersweet, sharp notes. They have more tannins, more fermentable sugars, all those sort of complex flavors that make it a better cider apple. So the variety behind me is a great example. It's called Golden Russet. You can find Golden Russet in nurseries. They are a great eating apple, but they make an even better cider apple. They're very unique because when they get to be mature, they'll have a very rough skin, almost like a sandpaper or a cat's tongue. And what this does is holds natural yeast and has a lot of fermentable sugar on the skin itself. So they make a really good hard cider and cider variety. So a lot of these cider varieties are considered heirloom varieties or antique apples. Apples originated from Europe. No apple is original to America. Malus domestica originated in Europe, in Kazakhstan. And so everyone had to bring their apples over. And back in the early 1800s, the settlers were planting these type of heirloom apples because this is what existed back in the day before Honeycrisp, before Fuji, before Gala. And so these apples have been around and grown for hundreds of years, and people are just now beginning to realize that they are really good tasting and they make great cider. Yarlington Mill, Golden Russet, all these varieties are considered heirloom varieties, but as you can see, I have them planted in mass, about 4 acres, for purposeful cider production.
Thanks to Ben and Mark last week for inviting us out to tour the farm. And of course, there are a lot of great activities out there, as well as being able to come home with a basket of apples. I happen to be a real apple lover. On occasion, I like mine in a pie with a lot of sugar, as opposed to just off the tree. We had a dog who used to just go pick the apples off and eat the apples off our trees. Yeah, really strange. All right, on that note, you have 2 pictures on the first one, Kyle. This is in Omaha. She has noticed these white spots on her northern magnolia branches last year. It's gotten a lot worse this year. Please help with a solution to the problem. She says the tree appears quite healthy, other than the spots.
Yep, they are the notorious Magnolia scale. So these are one of our largest soft scales, and they can be quite problematic for Magnolia. So definitely something you want to try to get a handle on. We talk a lot about scales. They're really difficult to control, and so it really requires an integrated approach. So one of the first things you can do really anytime is go out and just scrub off anything that you can physically reach. You can just take like a dish pad, scrub those off. The best time to probably do that would be like June, as those females are maturing. Before the little tiny crawlers are present, because they're really easy to miss with that. So you want to sort of get the large females before they have eggs or little crawlers under them. So right about now would be when they're producing the eggs, and those crawlers are going to be emerging really throughout August. So now, coming into August would be the time you would want to, if you're going to treat them with a contact insecticide, this would be the time to do it here in the next probably few weeks. So you can put some like double-sided sticky tape around some of those branches to monitor for the emergence of the crawlers. The good thing about these is they're so large that the crawlers can be seen relatively well. And so once you see those, then you can hit it with pyrethroids, carbaryl, insecticidal soap. All of those things are perfectly fine. You need to get really thorough coverage. And then, the final thing would be using a systemic insecticide. And so that would be a neonicotinoid you could apply as like a soil drench. It takes it up, moves through the plant, and then that basically all life stages are susceptible as they're feeding on the sap throughout the year. So usually the time to do that, if you use something like a imidacloprid, would be in May after the petals have fallen.
All right, thank you, Kyle. You have one picture on the next one. This came to us from Halsey National Forest. This guy was 1 3/4 inches long, and they're just wondering what he is or she.
Yeah, it's a longhorn beetle. Probably, I would say Prianus physicicornis, but definitely a Prianus species. They're mostly root feeders, and so that one generally feeds on grass roots, but it's a longhorn beetle.
All right, and one picture on the next one also. This one comes to us from Grand Island, but could come from anywhere. They've been seeing green June beetles in droves in the garden and doing what they think is damage. So what do you do to get rid of them?
Yeah, it is a green June beetle, and if the green June beetles are causing problem, you can protect the plants pretty well with carbaryl. So that's probably what I would do if they're like on fruit or a lot of your garden plants that has a pretty short post-harvest interval, so it's a pretty good option and should be fairly effective. But they should really be winding down about now, and so at this point you may not really need to necessarily do anything.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Rock, you have 3 pictures on this first one. This is a Lincoln viewer who loves the show, by the way. It's popping up both along his fence and throughout his turf, as we can see here. He's Lincoln and residential. What do we think this is?
So this is Spanish needles, and it's an annual, but it comes back every year primarily from seed. Prolific seeder, very small seed. The seed can move in water. It can move any number of ways. So that's why you're seeing the kind of invasion that you see there. And the really nice picture, 3 pictures that made it really pretty easy to identify. And so actually, it's really relatively easy to control with a pre-emergent. Now, Terry James tried Barricade or Prodiamine. She didn't have much luck. But then I looked it up when we talked about this prior to the show, and apparently dithiopure or the Dimension product or pendimethalin-based products, which are readily available at your garden store, do a pretty good job. Pre-emergent, post-emergent, any of the broadleaf herbicides, paying attention to the label, et cetera, should do a pretty good job knocking them back. Catch them when they're young, since it is an annual.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Rock. You have 2 pictures on the next one. This is a Lincoln viewer. She has this dry patch in her yard. She thinks it's a fungus, and yes, it's in turf, so you got it instead of Lauren. They've been treating it with a bio-advanced fungus control, 1 application. They got some other ones and did 2 applications, and it isn't getting any better.
So whenever you put on 2 different fungicides, and I looked them up, and they're 2 different modes of action, and both are relatively broad spectrum, and you're not getting any control, generally it's either going to be one of 2 things. It's going to be necrotic ring spot or summer patch, because those need to be controlled in March and April, or applied in March and April, but it doesn't show the characteristic patterns. So then you start wondering if maybe it's not an insect, and we bounce that around for a little bit as well. But when I look at those leaves that were dead and close to the ground, if you can pull up on them and they readily pull off, it could be grubs. They would be starting to show their injury right now, or it could even be sod webworm, because it appeared that the tall fescue was less affected than the Kentucky bluegrass. So need a little bit more diagnostics on them, and tell us whether the roots pull up or not, and if they don't, look for critters.
And I do hope that viewer, if they are missing their glasses, look at their own picture, because the glasses are lying in the front yard.
Oh, they are.
Picture. All right, Lauren, you have 3 right there. There they are, right in the middle.
That's funny.
Lauren, you have 3 pictures on the next one, on your first one here. This comes to us from Ashland. She has a 22-year-old spruce. They were out of town for 3 weeks, and then they found all sorts of brown needles halfway up, and then they've fallen off. You can see them all over on the ground on that one. And she said the damage does extend around to the front about halfway, and more information that's it's really kind of all through the tree. So
one of the things this picture that's showing right now is something that keys in on the idea of a needle cast disease, because the new growth isn't affected, and it's last year's needles that are being impacted. So I do believe it's one of the needle casts. It's also on a side, the whole tree's not affected. And it looks like it would be more in the shady area by the house. So that could very likely be a needle cast. Now, that said, needle cast diseases are very difficult to manage because they sporulate for long terms of time. So I would recommend in this case, if they really want to try to control that, to take and send a sample in so we know which needle cast it is to try to help the appropriate management strategy for it. It won't kill the tree, it will just thin it out. So even if you didn't do anything, it may just thin it out some. And if you could get some more air movement in that area where it's being affected, I think you may be okay without even making a fungicide application.
And is this the typical time to see that? Because we got this from another viewer as well.
Yeah, you would see it. You would tend to see it now because the infections occur even last year, but then as those branches elongate, and those needles or that infection continues, and then they drop.
All right, 2 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Colorado. She trimmed her lilac in the spring after it flowered, and then the leaves are curling, and then there are lots of brown spots on them.
And so this, there are, there's a bacterial leaf spot of lilac, and we could go down that path with this, but the wilting leaves, and looking in the picture, it looks like there's some larger stems in the background, and if that is the lilac, I'm wondering if this isn't an older lilac that maybe even has a borer or something with the wilting of the branch, because it would be really unusual to see wilting from our foliar diseases. I mean, you could have some sort of a verticillium wilt or something, but I'm just wondering if it's an older lilac and maybe they have some injury from other things. And I wouldn't be worried about the spots as much as I would the wilt
So maybe
on
she
that.
needs to
So
send
I would
us-
check that out and look to see if you see any evidence of borer activity, if they're on older, larger stems in there, and then are they using that third rule to pull out the larger stems if they want to shape their lilac that way.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Kelly, you have 3 pictures on this one. This comes to us from Alliance. This linden appears to be dying, and it has odd green growths, and it has this old wound, and it was planted big. And is this a goner? Do we really care what's going on with whatever this is?
Okay, well, we had to do a little bit of follow-up questions with this one, and we did find out that it was almost 12 feet tall when it was planted, and that is a very large tree to plant. It's a high risk to plant those, and then it sounds like it had the wound on the trunk to begin with. It sounds like it was balled and burlapped, and that the burlap was not removed when it was planted. So it kind of had everything going against it to begin with, and I think it's been in like 8 years, so it did okay for a while. I'm guessing maybe the drought years kind of were the straw that broke the camel's back, and not much hope for this tree. And in the future, try to start small. I know people like those big trees when they plant them, but a smaller tree will catch up and surpass that larger tree and probably have fewer problems over the course of its lifetime.
Right, exactly, and especially with balled and burlapped, you can't really tell what's going on
Right.
with the root mass. Yeah, all right, thank you, Kelly. You have 2 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from Grand Island. This particular viewer purchased 2 forest pansy red buds from the same nursery. Viewers, if you're not familiar, it's one that has purple foliage, or is supposed to. One is in Beatrice and the other's in Grand Island. He's saying that his mother's, which is in Beatrice, the leaves are deep purple, and his are more green, and they're all torn up. So what do we think is going on here?
Well, I think it's the microclimate, or the difference in what we call microclimates from Beatrice to Grand Island and where this one is. It's a young tree, and in looking at that, it has that light-colored pavers around it. They might be reflecting some heat and so on. And this tree is known, you do see it will be purple and green, and if it does have green in it, a lot of times that is heat stress. So I think it's just a difference, compare your mom's site, compare with this site. And also the leaves are so tattered, it looked to me like they maybe were scorched, so the edges turned brown and that weak tissue just dropped out or the wind knocked it out. So I think it's just, it's pretty young, it's stressed, and good that you have organic mulch there and not more rocks, and hopefully it'll adjust and adapt and do fine down the road, maybe, and all be purple.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, before we go to break, let's take a minute to hear from Gannon Rush from UNL's High Plains Regional Climate Center about what we can expect for this week's terrible weather forecast.
Thanks, Kim. I hope everyone had a chance to get outside and enjoy the phenomenal weather this past weekend. There's no subtle way to put this, but it's going to be a toasty one this week. Temperatures will be in the 90s through Monday, and a few places out west could hit triple digits. On Tuesday and Wednesday, much of the state will be near 100 degrees. Unfortunately, it seems like the heat's going to stick around until early August. Adding insult to injury, chances for rain are limited. A few scattered storms are possible this weekend, with one on Saturday night that could bring a half-inch of rain to the Valentine area. There is a swath from McCook up to the north central part of the state that could be bone dry this week. And that's your weekly weather forecast. Back to you, Kim.
And of course, now it is time for the lightning round. Kelly, we have changed everything, but not where we start. Okay. So you are first up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is a safe fertilizer that can be used around plants that we eat, especially herbs?
Okay. Well, as far as I know, they should all be safe. The ones I'd be most concerned about would maybe be some of the manures. They should be well rotted, and we only recommend applying them in the fall. Because of E. coli, salmonella, those type of things.
All right. We have a viewer who wants to know whether they should pinch their coleus flowers off now if they want to take cuttings for next year.
Definitely pinch the flowers off. We typically say deadhead the flowers. If you want to take cuttings of the leaves, you could do that now, or you could do it later in the season as well.
All right.
Written down.
We have an Omaha viewer who overwintered a rosemary. Looks nice, but it's not growing. Should they fertilize it or change the soil or both?
I would change the soil. We don't usually do a lot of fertilizing of herbs necessarily, but I would change the soil to some fresh soil, and that should have some, most of them have some nutrients in it if it is needed.
All right, excellent. And we are out of time for you. There's the lightning. You ready, Lauren?
I think
Why are you laughing?
There's so much going on here. It's such a neat set now.
All right. All right, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, your first one, this is from Decatur. They are wondering, what is a fungal mat? And they heard about this in reference to oak wilt.
A fungal mat.
A fungal mat.
Well, a lot of times.
It is a lightning round question.
Yeah, a lot of times when we're talking about fungal mats, it's kind of like if you saw a woven carpet and it's all that mycelia growing together that forms like a mat. So that would be what we're referring to with something called a fungal mat, much like a floor mat.
All right.
Fungal mat.
Is there any treatment for hackberry mosaic virus?
Cut the tree down.
All right.
With a chainsaw.
All right, with a chainsaw.
Or just let it go and enjoy it. It's just got the little specks on the leaves. It's pretty.
Okay. We have a lot of viewers who have those mushrooms and fungi wondering if they have so many this year, does that mean they have so many next year?
Maybe.
All right. This is a Lincoln viewer.
Weather dependent.
Wondering, how do shroom fruiting bodies appear 10 feet up in a living tree?
Oh, that's fascinating. Actually, since the cloud went, I can talk about this for a while now. It's forming out of like where a branch was or something, so it'll grow inside the tree. The tree is dead in the middle, and it's colonizing that. It's coming out where a branch used to be often.
All right.
Before you go to me, so isn't the largest organism in the world a fungal mat?
Yes, it is.
That's what
the
I
largest organism in the world, yes.
There we go.
Some of the fungi that are in forests, thousands of acres, same organism.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Rock, you ready?
Sure.
All right. Can you buy, this viewer wants to know if they can buy a little packet of grass seed.
Not that I know of. I mean, basically, you get a pound, or probably a pound is the smallest you can get.
All right. Do all grasses have leaf blades?
Yes.
This viewer wants to know, can they just flat out stop mowing right now because it's so hot?
If it's hot and it's not growing, then certainly not mowing is an option. And we actually recommend that you don't, especially if it's drought stress from wilt, because you can cause some damage with the mower wheels.
All right. Will Kentucky bluegrass grow underwater?
I have no idea. I don't know why you would want it to grow underwater.
This viewer wants to know whether they can fertilize now in the heat for that yellow grass using ironite.
It's not recommended with the quick releases, but there's some slow release forms, especially with the grub control products, that can effectively green it up a little bit this time of year.
All right. This is a Nelson viewer who wonders whether Bermuda grass will work this far north.
No.
All right. Nice job. Okay, Kyle, you have 6 to beat here.
Yeah.
All right, your first one comes to us, let's see, not sure where this viewer is from. They're wondering whether they can use an aphid spray on those aphids that is 1 part each of Blue Dawn isopropyl alcohol and vinegar to a gallon of water.
That's a new one for me. So I'm not sure. I've heard of isopropyl for like mealy bugs, kind of like with a cotton swab or something, but I've never heard of that combination. So.
All right. This is a Papillion viewer who is saying it is the invasion of the millipedes. How do they get rid of them, and are they damaging? They're in the house.
Yeah, seal up your house, I guess. Find any little cracks and try to seal them up. They're not damaging. Yeah, sometimes it happens and it's just hard to explain.
All right. This is an Omaha viewer who wonders, they're not seeing any bees or very few. Do we have an idea why?
No, I don't know. I guess I would, assume it may just be, sort of floral resources in their area that maybe isn't conducive to good diversity of bee swarm.
All right, excellent job all. And just in case you didn't know, yes, I did stack the deck.
I think you stacked the deck tonight because those
For you, since this is your last show.
Yeah, that's like, I want to thank all the small people that made this for me.
Right. Well, our produce is piling up once again out at our garden, and we are so happy that we can donate it to a good cause as well as using it as an educational tool each week here on the show. Let's take a few minutes to hear from Terry out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we are harvesting produce. We are well over 100 pounds that we have been able to take to the St. Mary Food Net Church on Saturday mornings for their donation. So we are very excited about that, and our produce just keeps rolling in. So we are looking forward to having more. Put on your calendar August 6th. That's when Grow Row will start, where you can bring your extra produce to us from 4:30 to 7 on Tuesday nights. Master gardeners will be here to be able to pick that up. But as you can see, the garden is beautiful, flowers everywhere. We are seeing lots of pollinators everywhere, and the garden is looking great. We are having to do a little bit of supplemental watering now that the kind of rain has stopped, but with our irrigation system is handling most of it, so we're just having to hand water our flower pots. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
And of course, right now, Kelly, you are going to talk about our beautiful plants of the week. What do we have this week?
These are really beautiful, beautiful purples that complement one another. The large tropical looking leaf is Alocasia Royal Hawaiian Waikiki. And it is one of the tender bulbs, so kind of like gladioli or caladium. It would have to be dug up late summer, early fall, and brought and stored indoors. Grown for its foliage, and it'll grow in part shade or full sun. And the taller purple-leafed one is our Joe Pye weed, which is one of our native flowers and great attractant for butterflies, bees. It's usually a buzz when it's blooming. And it'll get quite tall. It can get 5 to 6 feet tall unless you get one of the shorter cultivars, and that tolerates wet soil. So a lot of times it's grown as a rain garden plant.
Germany is.
All right, excellent. Great combination and something you can see in the backyard farmer garden.
Yes.
All right, as always, we have announcements of wonderful things going on in the gardening world. Our first one tonight is the Lincoln Iris Society Rhizome Sale and Auction, Saturday, July 27th. 10 to 4 p.m. at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. Our second one is also Iris. This is Greater Omaha Iris Society, Friday, August 2nd, 2 to 7 p.m. in Omaha. And our third one is yet again the Backyard Farmer Grow Row Produce Donations. August 6th is the start, 4:30 p.m. to 7 in the Backyard Farmer Garden. All righty, so picture questions next. We come to you, Kyle, with 3 pictures on this one. This is actually a Scotts Bluff viewer. She says she's wondering if this damage on her coneflowers and her daisies is from mites. She has read she needs to destroy all the affected flowers, and she also wants to know what's happening next year. And this one looks a little like aster yellows, but maybe not exactly.
Yeah, so I do wonder about aster yellows. There is an aerophyte mite, a rosette gall mite, that can affect coneflowers. So as far as I know, it's only a problem in coneflowers. It doesn't attack any of the other asters. So that last one does look like it could be from that rosette gall mite, but it's, it would be helpful, I think, to see the whole plant too, because that should only really affect the flower. And so, if you have sort of symptoms, chlorosis or yellowing of the leaves, it may be something else. For controlling the mite, really, the best option is just to remove those infested heads as soon as possible. And you want to try to catch them, like as you're clipping them, catch them into a bag or something and seal it up, so that those mites, they're so tiny and they easily spread via wind. So you don't want them to kind of spread be knocked off and spread that way as you're removing it. These others, I'm not really sure what's going on, so it wouldn't be that same mite. So I don't know, Lauren, if you have any ideas if either of those look like they could be aster yellows to you, or if it's something else, I'm not sure.
Really just the coneflower was the one that I thought looked more aster yellows. The others I'm not certain on.
So maybe she could just flick some off and see what comes out of the other ones. Hard to tell. All right, Kyle, you have 2 pictures on the next one. This is a Carney viewer, a red oak tree, about 9 years old. He was seeing some cupping on the lower leaves, and now it's spreading, and then some of the leaves have these little aphids, and then he found some holes in the trunk with sawdust on the ground. So is this tree being attacked by multiple beasties?
Yeah, this is one, I think, I'm not sure. More information is needed on this one. I'd really like to see kind of the whole tree and maybe that sawdust and have to, a little bit more information to get a better picture. So these holes don't really strike me as insect related. They're really irregular, and when we see the exit holes of borers, they tend to be quite either round or kind of oval shaped or something, but quite regular in size. And that staining around there, I don't know if there's been some sap oozing or what's going on. Potentially, if there's sawdust around there, another thing it could be is that there's carpenter ants that are using that sort of hole that's kind of rotted out or something, and they're kicking out that sawdust. So that's one I think we just need more pictures, more information, or you might want to contact an arborist and have them take a look. I don't think the aphids are a problem. There's not enough of them. They're not stressing that tree at all.
All right, one picture on the next one. He just wants to know why his plants are attracting so many of these beauties, and what is this?
This looks like it's probably a common blue mud dauber. There's a few species that look very similar, but I think that's what this one is. And why they're attracted to this in particular, I don't know. It could be a lot of things. It could be something visual with the flowers. It could be they like the nectar, or it might be,
just because.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right.
Awesome picture.
Yeah, no kidding.
Beautiful.
All right, Rock, 2 pictures on this first one. No question. He just wanted our viewers to know that he dug/pulled this dandelion out of his yard in Omaha. It had a 27-inch root, so no wonder the things are so hard to kill.
And I love that he did that. He's a person after my own heart. And I have to tell one quick story. While I was in graduate school, we heard a story about them trying to blow up dandelions with dynamite, and it was 4th of July season, right? So we had M80s, and so we took 4 dandelions and we planted an M80 at the base of 3 of these and blew dandelion parts all over the turf research farm. And 3 weeks later, 3 out of the 4 came back. So these are tenacious plants.
All right, you have 2 pictures on the next one, and this is really interesting. This is an Omaha viewer who had a bed with Creeping Charlie and Vinca. He wanted the Vinca, but not Creeping Charlie. He did say he used full-strength ortho ground clear, used a paintbrush, and so what we have, viewers, is a before and an after, and he's eliminating the Creeping Charlie. He's wondering, is this a good way to solve the problem?
Well, we talked about dandelions being tenacious. This is tenacity defined, right? I mean, you think about what he's done to try to eradicate that in his Vinca. A couple of things, though, I do have some questions. I'm questioning whether he used ground clear. He listed the products, and ground clear actually has a long residual herbicide in it that will basically sterilize scorched earth ground for about a year. So I'm thinking he used something other than ground clear. And then when he said full strength, I'm hoping that he dilutes them, because we know these herbicides are designed to be diluted because by themselves they may not translocate very well, but with a little bit of dilution then they can spread out and dissipate over the surface of the leaf. But all that said, congratulations on these tenacious D in spades, right? It's just amazing.
All right, you have 1 picture of a vine on this next one. This comes to us from a cook. She's wondering what this is. For starters, what do you think this is?
So you and I talked about this a little bit, and honeyvine milkweed has a more lobed, where the stem comes in, and I questioned whether but you spot that one. So if they snap the stem and it, has milky sap in it, then that's probably butterfly milkweed, or the viney milkweed, whatever. But there is a species that grows in Nebraska called mile a minute, because of its tenacious, well, there we go with tenacious again, growth habit. And it looks like mile a minute because they have more of a triangular. So another sample, or maybe a sample with more leaves on it, would be certainly helpful for us. But if it snaps and it's got milky sap in it, then Kim was right again, and it's honeyvine milkweed.
But it probably isn't, so we'll see. More pictures. All right, Lauren, you have 3 pictures on the first one here. This is an oak, and she's seeing some browning on the leaves, and there's bare branches, and then she's seeing second picture there, and the third one shows the brown spots. And then your next set of 3 is also an oak, and this one's in papillion, turning yellow, and you can see the oak in the background there. It's very different environments for both of these. Leaves also have brown spots, or they've turned brown in sections of the tree, and this has happened in the last several years. So,
and 2 totally different things here going on. So this last one, where you can see this injury between the veins, or in the previous picture where you could see the margins brown, and that was just in one part of the tree. That's going to be the result of a canker, possibly a girdling root at the base of the tree. Something's restricting nutrient flow just to that section in the tree. So follow those branches down, look for a canker. You may be able to prune that out. We'll also see the same type of symptom if we have a just emerging canker in a shrub or a tree in the fall. They'll change color earlier, that part of the tree often. So you'll see those types of symptoms. So that one's fairly, I feel pretty confident with that. The other one, with the oak that's by the house, that's a little harder. So the spots and things on that, I really don't think that's anthracnose based on where it's at. I'm questioning if it's not maybe some heat reflection from the house that's doing some burning, or something like that. I don't see the pattern there and the way it's out in the open and everything. I just don't see that being anthracnose. And I did visit with our diagnostic coordinator, Kyle, who's on the show too. And he indicated that he had some symptoms like this and nothing was really growing out of some other samples he had. So I'm thinking it's more environmental.
All right. One picture on the next one. And she says, I'm sure you've had this on BYF before, but she found one in her flower bed, and it is creepy.
I just love it, and I would love to have that come up in my flower bed every year if I could do it. But this is dead man's fingers. You can look it up. It's a Xylaria is the genus. There are all kinds of Xylaria species of different sizes. Some of you have probably seen them in your planters. But look up dead man's fingers. It's very interesting. It's very neat. And it actually causes black root rot on some species, so it can be a pathogen also.
All right. Kelly, you have 3 pictures on this first one. This is a catalpa. It's in Glenwood, Iowa. It's lost half of its leaves. It happened every year for probably the last 3. Do they just need to cut it down?
Probably. I think what's going on is verticillium wilt, which is a disease. It is a pathogen. But if you look, the first 2/3 to 3/4 of the tree looks like it's gone. There is some chlorosis, a pale yellowing of leaves, which is in common with catalpa. And then on the right-hand side, there's some leaves that are just completely wilted and brown. So verticillium wilt is a pathogen that infects probably during the drought years when trees are stressed. It's one of those pathogens that's in the soil and doesn't do much until a plant gets really stressed, and then it grows in the water-conducting tissue, cuts it off, and there is no control. So it's far enough gone.
Yep.
Time to start over.
Start over. All righty. 2 pictures on the next one. This comes to us from rural northern Kearney County. She planted blue lake bush beans for years, but they're acting like pole beans. What's going on?
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on unless an errant pole bean seed got in with the blue lake beans. I'm not enough of a bean breeder. I'm not a bean breeder or a vegetable person to know whether bush beans maybe even started with pole beans and there was some reversion there. So not really sure what's going on, but they look good and healthy, and hopefully they produce lots of beans.
All right, and 1 picture on the next one, Kelly. This viewer planted this flower. This year it's 6 feet tall. Last year it was only 2. He wonders what it is and what should he do with it after a freeze?
Okay, this is one of the Rudbeckias, and last year, if it was just planted last year and only got 2 feet, that's not unusual. Sometimes it'll take perennials, a year to 2 to sometimes 3 years to get to full size, and all the rain this year might have helped it as well. So, and once it's a herbaceous perennial, so once it freezes, you can go ahead and cut it back to the ground.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, anybody who's got a front lawn wants to keep it green and lush, even when summer gets hot and dry. We've had the solution for this problem on this show for over 30 years, and we thought we'd finally share it with you.
Backyard Farmer rocks!
I'm Rockaswa, and I hate clover.
Okay, put your finger down just a little
No, I like
bit.
it in front of my face.
Okay.
Next to Fred is Extension Turfgrass Specialist, Rock Aswa. Hello, Rock. Haven't seen you for a little while.
I was here last week.
You were?
Yes.
That's a little while.
Isn't that interesting, Lauren, how when they're describing diseases, they say cat vomit, poop, and measles. And it's your passion. Gosh, Kim, this would be a perfect place for a green ash or maybe a gosh, golly gee willikers.
Greetings, I'm Professor P. Cantaloupe. In this class, you were supposed to learn a few things, but I've noticed from the exams you haven't done very well.
I retire, you can show that on air. I don't care.
And of course, the answer to all your turf problems for 3 decades has been our dear friend Rock. Tonight is his last show. We'd say we're heartbroken, but actually he just sort of broke his wrist, so that's good enough. But we do want to wish him nothing but the best in his future days. All right, questions for the last round here. You have 2 pictures on the first one. This comes to us from Wahoo. What would cause this linear damage on a lily leaf? An insect.
Yeah, so something, basically something did a little bit of feeding on it while that leaf was still rolled up and kind of caused that shot hole damage as it unrolled. So there's a few things it could be. It's hard to say for sure what it was, but I don't see a whole lot of damage there. Otherwise, probably not a big concern.
And fun. All right, you have 1 picture on the next one, Kyle. This is a Midtown Omaha viewer. Isn't that cool? And she wonders what it is.
Well, it's an imperial moth. It looks like it's just a closing or emerging, and so they have to kind of pump their wings up, and it's in the process of doing that.
All right. Rock, you have 2 pictures on your first one. This comes to us from Union, Nebraska. She wonders, good luck, how and when to remove orchard grass and brome from her asparagus bed, and how does she do that, especially when it's this big?
So that, that grass is pretty mature and pretty large, and the asparagus patch is pretty robust as well. If they really want to spend some serious money, like a couple $100s, they can get Fusilade DX, and that'll work. It's labeled for asparagus, etc., but I don't think they really want to do it. So it's going to be hand wicking with a glyphosate-based product, and fall applications are going to be suggested, right? Because those are both perennial grasses that need to be, and it's going to take persistence and multiple applications. So I would start this spring. Make sure you don't get any on the asparagus. I mean, asparagus is actually relatively tolerant, but at the end of the day, they're going to get some injury. It's going to be next to impossible to do unless they're really, really careful.
All right, Holdridge viewer, this is your last question. Various patches of black medic. What is the best way to eradicate and when?
So black medic is best eradicated with a pre-emergent herbicide in the spring, generally about the same time as you would do a crabgrass herbicide, but only so. Most of the crabgrass herbicides work really well except for dimension on black medic, and then once you get it, if you catch it when it's young, you can catch it when it's really young with a phenoxy type 2,4-D type product or something like that, and get pretty good control. When it gets as robust as that picture that the viewer sent in, it's pretty hard to control. It's a legume, it's an annual, and sometimes a little bit of nitrogen will suppress it a little bit.
And hopefully you won't have it in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think we have better weeds in North Carolina.
Of course. All right, Lauren, 1 picture on this one. This is Antelope County. Is this sunburn or a disease in her peonies?
I think this could be botrytis blight, and this also, they mentioned they had powdery mildew. I'd really just recommend sanitation as much as possible on this, and clean it up in the fall and then mulch it up.
All right, and your second one is also a peony, and this one, same thing. Is this?
I was blending these. Sorry, yes, it's powdery mildew, same thing.
Yeah.
Really for both of these, if you can in the fall after everything senesces, cleaning it up, getting that debris off, and then putting some mulch down.
All right, we have about 90 seconds. What kind of shroom is this?
Ash bolete. That's a bad looking picture from that angle. It looks better this way. Yeah, it's an ash bolete.
All right.
You can read about it.
Wonderful. Kelly, you have 2 pictures on the first one.
Okay.
What is this plant?
This is moth mullein, and it is an introduction, but it's a well-behaved introduction and kind of pretty.
Yeah, and gets kind of big and does that. And you have 2 pictures on the next one. They got this big viburnum. It has the flower buds. He thinks it's grown, but the flowers haven't opened. Any ideas?
Okay, well, I think it was just planted this year, and so maybe it's just getting established, maybe got a little bit stunted. Sometimes I see those flower buds sometimes where they just don't open. I don't know why. I think he was worried about not having any fruit as well. You know, with viburnums, you have to have 2 or 3 different types of viburnums because they're not really self-pollinating. And it's also too young to have very good blooming yet or much fruiting. So hopefully with time, it'll do well and keep growing. And hopefully you have some different types of viburnums nearby, or you might not get a lot of fruiting in the future.
All right, thank you, Kelly.